Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for finding us. I hope you're doing well. Leave me a comment. I have a question for the comments today, very specific question. Let me know what your favorite movie monster is, number one. Number two, let me know your favorite monster movies. Because I was thinking that, if I had to say, what is my favorite movie monster, the first thing that comes to mind and the most obvious thing is Godzilla, right? I'm a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. Is Hellboy a monster? And he's from comics originally, but does he count as a movie monster? I don't know. But, there's the Pale Man in Pan's Labyrinth, and Guillermo del Toro's got a lot of great monsters. But then my favorite monster movie, if you put a gun to my head, the first one that comes to mind and the one I would probably stick with is Frankenstein, 1931. I fucking love that movie. So then I was like, okay, so my favorite movie monster is maybe not my favorite monster movie. Anyway, the reason I'm saying this is because we're talking about a monster movie, kind of. It's The Guyver. So this is a Japanese-American co-production. This movie came out in, I wrote the exact date down, 1991, March 18th of 1991. So this came out 2 weeks before my 8th birthday. This film was directed by Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang. It was written by John Purdy, and it was produced by Brian Usna. It stars Mark frickin' Hamill. So yes, Luke Skywalker is in this movie. Vivian Wu, Jack Armstrong, David Gale, who is the evil scientist dude, the mad scientist in Reanimator, and Jeffrey Combs is in this too, who is also in Reanimator and who is also in From Beyond. So why am I reviewing this movie? Because it's a Japanese-American co-production. It's based on manga, which is Japanese, but it's in English. It's set, I believe, in it's obviously shot in Los Angeles. You can see that it's Los Angeles if you've ever been to LA. I think it takes place in Los Angeles. And there's three reasons why I'm reviewing this particular release and this movie. Number one, Dom O'Brien, who is an awesome dude on Twitter and is an author who wrote a book about this movie, someone I've come to know through social media, through doing this channel, who's just kind of a very overall just good person, was heavily involved in this release just as a passion project because he loves this movie. He wrote a book about this movie, and so I just thought that was really cool. And when you get to see people who are just really cool people getting involved in these releases and giving everything they can, there's a commentary track on here with the two directors that's moderated by Dom O'Brien, right? So the level of passion and involvement in these releases by people who really care about these films, I just think that's a really cool thing to see, and I wanted to give it some shine on the channel. This is that's number one reason I wanted to review this. Number two, this is a 4K UHD Ultra HD and CD soundtrack 3-disc limited collector's edition. This is from Unearthed Films. Now, this is a line within Unearthed called Unearthed Classics. Unearthed Films, from my perspective, is mostly known for doing really extreme horror movies, the kind of stuff that I have a really difficult time watching. Movies like Untold Story, right? And other, I think they did the April, what are those movies called? April something or another? They're kind of torture porn type of movies. They do really extreme stuff that I just, sometimes I see their style, I think I follow them on Twitter, and I'll sometimes see their Twitter posts, and I'm like, oh god, I have to stop looking at this right now because this is too extreme for me. And it's just a 30-second thing on Twitter, right? This is a really freaking good release at a really high level that makes me think of the great boutique labels that are out right now. And so I wanted to give some shine to a release from a label that's not, I think, what you would expect this label to release. That's a really good, high quality release, because there's just so many labels putting out so much good stuff right now. And I feel like I mostly cover Eureka and 88, obviously, because they're putting out the vast majority of the volume here. I do a fair amount of Arrow. I've been doing some Vinegar Syndrome and Connie stuff recently, but I don't really have the bandwidth to cover every single label that's putting out stuff that people who watch this channel are interested in, right? And so I just wanted to do something different and put a shine on a different label and a different type of project. The third reason I wanted to review this on the channel is that I have been on a Brian Usna kick recently, because Brian Usna produced From Beyond, and I love that movie. And I picked up the Vinegar Syndrome 4K Blu-ray like multi-disc release in their Black Friday sale last year, and I just rewatched it recently. We did a whole podcast episode on it, me and Mike. And the link to the podcast is in the description of this video, by the way, so you can go and listen to all the episodes. We've got dozens of them at this point. I think we've been doing it for about a year and a half now. So we've released a fair number of episodes, and we love doing it. It's always really fun. It's like really fun to chat with Mike about movies and stuff like that. So I've just been on a Brian Usna kick recently, and when I saw that this had come out, I was like, I should check that movie out because I'd never seen it before, and Reanimator is amazing, From Beyond is amazing. So this is a tokusatsu movie. This is not a genre I am at all familiar with. It's like a practical effects heavy, like monster sci-fi superhero type of genre, right? Now, I have seen several Godzilla movies. I don't know how many because I watched a lot of them on like TV when I was a kid. I don't have like a count of how many I've seen, but I've seen a lot of them. I've seen Ultra Q, which I don't think is tokusatsu. Maybe it is. I don't know if that counts. Let me know in the comments. I love Ultra Q. Like, I freaking love Ultra Q. Yeah, I loved it. I've seen the first Ultraman series. And I've seen... God, I saw some other tokusatsu movie a couple years ago. I'm not going to remember the title of it for the life of me. I bought the Blu-ray upon recommendation from someone who I had become friends with for doing this channel and for having like the Facebook group and stuff like that. And I love Japanese cinema, but my love of Japanese cinema is very siloed. Like, I am a huge fan of what I consider to be kind of like golden era Japanese cinema, which is like 40s, 50s, 60s kind of stuff. But even within that era, it's like specific stuff, right? Like there's a lot of stuff from that era I haven't seen. But I love Kurosawa, who we talk about all the time on this channel. Ugetsu, the Mizoguchi film, is maybe my like single favorite. That might be my like desert island Japanese movie. Like, that movie is so freaking good. It's incredible. I've only seen like 4 or 5 Ozu movies, but they're all amazing. Masaki Kobayashi is an amazing filmmaker. Like Konichi Kawa, people like that. And then anime, which I've gotten into relatively recently. But I've loved Miyazaki for years, but I've gotten into other anime. Like, I know Akira is a movie I saw like when I was like, whatever, 12 or something like that. But like a lot of anime I've gotten into more recently. But other than that, my knowledge of Japanese cinema, like I said, is, I would call it siloed. It's very spotty. So I really haven't seen that many of the films in this genre, and so because of that, I don't have much of a reference point. And so I'm not gonna do a detailed, like, deep dive review of this the way I do with some of the Hong Kong stuff, because I just feel like I don't really know what the talking points are, and I don't really know what to say. I can just give you my basic general impressions of it upon watching it as someone who doesn't know anything about these types of films. What I thought while I was watching it is that this is like an early 90s, like, urban dystopian kind of like R-rated version of a Power Rangers episode. And I mean that in like the most complimentary way possible. I never watched Power Rangers when I was younger. My kids have gotten into it recently. And so because of that, I've seen a shitload of it because they're like really into it. And I like the goofiness of Power Rangers, and I like the kind of weirdness of it, and I like it has like this kind of naivety to it that I think is really appealing, where the characters are just like really like, aw shucks gee whiz kind of people. The protagonist in this movie is very much like that. He's like very much like a Power Ranger type of protagonist. So what is this movie about? The Guyver is so it takes place in kind of like a dystopian type of future sci-fi world, where there's like alien technology that has been discovered on Earth, and this evil corporation is trying to find this like super suit that has supposedly been left here, right? Now there's a guy who works for this company who's a scientist who gets this thing and smuggles it away from the company because he thinks it's too powerful for them to have access to, and he hides it. He is then killed by the company. So his daughter is dating this guy who they met because I think they go to the same martial arts school, right? So they're like in the same class, and they kind of met that way. He ends up finding the suit, and it like binds with him, So he becomes like this superpowered, indestructible, like badass, right? But he doesn't know what he's doing, and he doesn't understand the powers of the suit. So the bad guys, who, as we come to find out, not really a spoiler, can morph into from human form into these like alien monster type of things, are coming for him. And then Mark Hamill, who's, by the way, Mark Hamill is freaking incredible in this movie. Like, he's like this grizzled, like drunken detective type of character that is like a million miles from Luke Skywalker. And he's a very diverse actor. And I know that it's not fair to reduce him to being Luke Skywalker, because he's done so much awesome stuff in his career. But he will never not be Luke Skywalker. And as someone who watched Star Wars, like, I can't even count how many times as a kid, it's hard not to see him as Luke Skywalker, right? He's so good in this movie, right? So he's working with these people to try to figure out what happened to the dad scientist who was murdered, and the guy who runs the evil corporation is the mad scientist from Reanimator, right? David Gale. And Jeffrey Combs is a scientist who works for that company. So you have this like kind of almost like Reanimator tie-in mad scientist thing, which the parts of this movie, there were two things about this movie that I freaking loved. And again, I'm not familiar with the genre, so I have no reference points. So there were parts of it where I was just like, I don't know if this is like what we expect as fans from this type of movie. Like, there's some very, very goofy, like Power Ranger style humor in it. And I was like, this is okay. Let's just go with it. This is unexpected. This is not a super gruesome movie. It should be pointed out. It is bloody in places. It is rated R, but it's not like a really gruesome, like Cronenberg body horror, people being ripped to pieces. Like, it's not that type of thing, though there is some blood and violence in it. I've heard that the second one is batshit insane and like way more gruesome and violent and nuts. But the parts of this movie I liked the most were when the people turn into the creatures, and you get these really amazing scenes of like practical effects of humanoids turning into these crazy monster creatures and then like killing people, and like violence and mayhem ensuing, right? And there's also a bit where we end up in the lab of like the evil corporation, and we see the scientists working on this like batshit insane science, and they like really lean into like the mad scientist craziness in the lab and like all this crazy shit happening. I really like that, because I really like obviously I'm telling you that Frankenstein is my favorite monster movie. I like mad scientist shit. I love mad scientists, and I think we need more of them in mainstream narrative fiction. So that is my appeal to anyone who's working on any kind of, if you're making a movie right now, think about adding a mad scientist to your film, because I think that'll really help you. So it's a 4K release, like I said, as well as Blu-ray and CD soundtrack. So you have the slipcase, and then it pulls out, and you get the 4K case on the inside there. And then you have the 4K UHD disc there. Now, I should also say I don't have a 4K player, and I don't have a 4K TV, so I watch the Blu-ray. So if you're extremely wealthy and you want to donate a massive 4K TV and a 4K player to me, hit me up. I did put a poll in Patreon, and I asked, should I use money from Patreon? Because I'm kind of saving some Patreon money right now for like more expensive box sets that I haven't been able to get. The patrons, excuse me, specifically requested that I get the T. Lung David Chang Shaw Brothers Shout Factory set, which is like almost $200. So I've been saving a couple months worth of Patreon stuff, and I put up a poll, and it was like, should I save this money to get a 4K player so that I can watch more 4K movies and review 4K releases, or should I just stick to Blu-ray? And unanimously, the result of the poll was, don't get the 4K player, just review the Blu-rays, keep going. So for now, I do not have a 4K player, but the Blu-ray looked great, and so I'm very happy with having Blu-ray, and so it looked great. And then the CD soundtrack is right there. And then Dom O'Brien, who I mentioned at the front of this video, who is all over this release with so many awesome contributions, wrote an ode to the bonkers battling biomorphs, which starts with, the old adage they don't make them like they used to has become a trite and often overused saying to categorize films from the halcyon days of video store rentals and pre-internet filmmaking. And then he says, unfortunately, despite being begrudgingly used, it's probably the best descriptor for a specific selection of films that meet the above criteria. With that being said, they don't make films quite like the Guyver anymore. So yeah, it's just like, I mean, who doesn't love shit like this? It's very well written, and it's a really, fun, nostalgic, loving take upon these types of films. And I am a sucker for people who are really passionate about something, who really love something, and who really just want to tell you about it and want you to love it too. And I love it when I've been on Twitter a lot recently, and you just so much of Twitter is people defining themselves by what they hate. Right? I mean, obviously political discourse, right, is the obvious example of that. But like Doctor Doom, the whole thing with Comic-Con, and they announced that Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Doctor Doom, right? And I see a lot of tweets of I hate this, or blah blah. This is why I hate this. And I'm not saying you have to like that, right? If you're upset about it, you're upset about it. Whatever. There's no judgment coming from me. But it's interesting to me that in a lot of these discourses I've been seeing recently, like the new Killer, the John Woo remake of The Killer is coming out, and a lot of people have made it their mission in life to let everyone within earshot know that they fucking hate the fact that this movie is coming out. And it's well, I don't, my perspective is always more instead of being enraged that John Woo made this movie, well, maybe just be happy that he made the original and go and watch that and tweet about that. And I think it's weird that people define themselves by the things that they hate, rather than defining themselves through the things that they love and that they're passionate about, that they care about, that they want to share with other people. Because then the world just becomes more hateful and divisive, and the world is hateful and divisive enough already. And you only have so much time on this earth, right? Do you just want to spend all your time seething about stuff that you fucking hate, which, by the way, oftentimes doesn't fucking mean anything at all? It makes no difference. I mean, ultimately, nothing means anything. Right? We don't need to get into that, but at some point the last human being will die. The earth will be incinerated and destroyed as the sun expands, and every any and all memory and evidence of human existence will vanish from the universe, and then none of it fucking means anything. But even within the confines of our own tiny little lives in this vast universe, I don't know. Why do we spend our times being so fucking angry all the time? And so my point being, the fact that so much love and passion and care for this film has gone into this release makes me really love it. And it makes me want to care about it and cherish it. It makes me want to tell other people that they should see it, because it's a positive thing that people care about art and care about goofiness and violence and monster movies and superhero movies and these things that they loved in childhood. And maybe they had specific, there are very specific reasons that I've probably never talked about on this channel why I very deeply love movies and the cinematic experience, and what it gives to me as someone who can go there and find certain things, right? I know that's kind of vague and whatever, right? But to just see that passion and to see that meaning and that joy, it just makes me, I don't know, it makes me happy, and it makes me warm and fuzzy on the inside. So there's a shitload of bonus material on here, which I'm just going to go over very briefly with you. There's a commentary with the co-directors Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang, which is moderated by Dom O'Brien, who is the author of the book and who is also an awesome person on Twitter and who wrote the liner notes in here. There is a new commentary with, that's a new commentary as well, I should say. A new commentary with actor and SFX artist Evil Ted Smith and Creature Shop Lab Tech. One thing I want you to do in the comments also is tell me, we've got Screaming Mad George and we've got Evil Ted Smith. What would your name like that be if you were involved in a movie like this and you've got to come up with a badass name like that? So Creature Shop Lab Tech and Miniature Supervisor Wyatt Weed. New interview with producer Brian Usna. I love Brian Usna. He's just such an interesting person too. The Brian Usna and on the From Beyond Blu-ray, it's Brian Usna and Stuart Gordon. Their interviews are so interesting on the making of there. New interview with co-director Screaming Mad George. New suit tests with commentary by co-director Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang. So that's footage of them testing the suits and stuff like that. New outtakes with commentary from co-director Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang. New gag reel with commentary from the directors. And new production and artwork gallery alternate title sequence. I mean, this is everything that you could possibly think of is on here, and it's awesome. The movie is The Guyver. I said this is going to be a short video. It's 20 minutes long now because I went off on this weird philosophical tangent. But what do? It's the laundry room. And you know what that means if you watch the channel. It means it's late at night. My brain is not properly wired. Not that it is. on an average day at a reasonable hour. But anyway, my name is Will. You are watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. As always, I thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.